Welcome everyone. We are live on today's show. I have been absent from the internet for a little while because I've actually been in a country town in Australia shooting a feature film. And I actually drove an hour out offset to come here to get some Wi-Fi so I could do this interview, this live stream, which I'm really excited about today. We scheduled this ages ago because I think it's a super interesting topic. We're talking about wormhole. And I have with me here Gabriel Cardona, who is the lead engineer for Bitcoin Cash. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
So let's first of all just start off by explaining to people in a nutshell, what is wormhole? And then I wanted to get into the specifics, like the history of it, the creation and all of that. So what is it, Gabriel?
Sure, absolutely. So wormhole is a token proposal which was created by Bitmain in August of last year. And it is a fork of the Omni protocol, which has existed for many years on BTC. And, USD Tether is an Omni token on BTC. So it's a fork of Omni for Bitcoin Cash, and it's been extended with a couple of different features like ERC-721 tokens, which are non-fungible tokens, such as CryptoKitties is the most famous one in the ecosystem. And then also there is a coming smart contract platform. So really it is a fork of Omni for Bitcoin Cash, which allows you to create fixed and managed tokens, do crowd sales and ICOs. You can do airdrops, you can do non-fungible tokens, you can do stable coins, and there's a smart contract platform coming. So really it is a token proposal for Bitcoin Cash.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about this. I mean, you mentioned before in past interviews about how this is kind of like the Cambrian explosion of the Bitcoin Cash sphere. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. Some people will look at this space and be like, we've got Bitcoin. Why do we need other currencies? And then you're saying, well, we've got Bitcoin Cash. Also, we want all of these other tokens. We want to add functionality. So let's talk about that mindset and why you feel that way and the history of how we got here. So starting with this idea of this Cambrian explosion, because you do see a whole lot of things going on in the Bitcoin Cash sphere at the moment that are really interesting. So, what makes you talk about the history of wormhole and how we got here?
Sure. So let's talk about sort of the history of tokens in the context of blockchain technology. So I like to say that, in the beginning was Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was good. And because Bitcoin transactions allow you to store a small amount of metadata to the blockchain, it wasn't long after Bitcoin's creation that developers realized that you could use Bitcoin transactions to issue and manage assets other than money. So, of course, we all know Satoshi got it really well by making the very first asset on the blockchain money, because that incentivizes miners to validate and secure the network. But right out of the gate, maybe a year or two after it launched, people started proposing other things. So the first thing I've been able to sort of pull out of the archives is Namecoin, which is in 2010. So the very first merge mining proposal was created by Satoshi around Namecoin. And the idea there was simply, what if we were to use the blockchain as like a DNS system? So today, if I go to my browser and I type in bitcoin.com, that's going to hit a DNS server, which is going to tell, my computer what the IP address is of the machine, which hosts, bitcoin.com's assets. But instead of having that sort of centralized system, what if we could use the blockchain for that? And Satoshi actually created merge mining around Namecoin in 2010. And so around 2011, we get the idea of escrow transactions. So that is, imagine I have a mining rig and you have Bitcoin and you want to buy it from me, but we don't know each other and we've never met. We can create a 2 of 3 multi-sig. You can get one of the keys, I can get one of the keys, and we can give one to a third party, and then you can lock your funds into that transaction. I can send you the mining rig, and when you get it and you open it, if you're happy with what you've gotten, you and I can both sign the transaction and you can get paid. Nice shades. If you don't like the mining rig which I sent you, you can then go and go to the third party, and you two can sign the transaction and you can get your money back. So that was 2011. Around 2012, we have the idea of colored coins. So the idea here is, the Bitcoin model is based on UTXO, unspent transaction output. That's very much like the money you find in your wallet. You may have a handful of coins, different denominations and different size bills, and whenever you go to create a transaction, you kind of got to put together the numbers you need and either get back change or do it exactly. So somebody thought, well, what if I colored one of these Satoshis, let's say gold, we create gold coin, and then I give that to you, and you bring me physical gold, and I put it in my vault, and I issue you some gold coin. And then you can have wallets which are aware of colored coins, so you could transfer the gold coin to somebody else. So you could basically spend that UTXO to somebody else. You could have wallets which are able to do mixing. So let's say you took a gold coin and then you mixed it with, let's say, a purple coin. You could have some a different colored coin that comes out of that. And then if somebody ever brings you
purple,
yes, exactly. And then if somebody ever brings you the gold coin, you can, of course, give them the physical gold from your vault and you can spend those Satoshis. So that was around 2012, colored coins. And that was kind of like the very first idea of tokens, if you will. So 2013, we get the idea of decentralized exchanges. So it wasn't long after the people realized that if you're going to have a bunch of different assets on the blockchain, we need a way that's decentralized and trustless to exchange them. And that is DEXs, decentralized exchanges. And then, of course, there was even more after that. So there was the idea of smart property. So let's imagine, for example, that we were throwing like a party or a concert or something, and we issue all of our tickets on the blockchain. We could be very confident that they weren't being counterfeit. We could track when somebody sends them or trades them or sells them to somebody else. And then whenever they show up at the concert, they can simply sign a transaction. We can get the ticket back from them, burn it. They can get the UTXO, and then they can be inside the concert. Yeah. And then after that was
and the idea of before we go on there, because this is like a long history of all these things. It's funny because you're talking about like Satoshi being involved in these things like early on and with Namecoin and we don't really think of that. We sort of think of Bitcoin and then that's it, right? Mm-hmm. And then he disappeared, right? And we didn't really hear from him. But actually, I mean, cryptocurrency is one really amazing use case of blockchain tech, and I'd say it's probably like the key use case. It's like the killer app. But there's so many things, as you've been talking about, that can be we can use this technology for, and so yeah, it's really fascinating. I just wanted to interject with that. So keep going, because I'm loving this history.
Sure. So next we got the idea of smart contracts. So we're all very familiar with the idea of contracts, which are of course enforced by the legal system. But what if you could have a smart contract, which was a self-enforcing piece of software that ultimately lived on the blockchain? And then somebody took that and just extended it all the way out to some extreme degree, saying, well, we know that, you know, businesses and corporations are really just like nested entities of contracts. What if you could create a corporation which lived entirely on the blockchain? And that, of course, is the distributed autonomous organization, or the DAO. And so, you know, going back to 2010 and kind of fast forwarding through 2014, there were people who were interested in using Bitcoin and blockchain technology for things which were not just currency. And of course, the primary figurehead from that camp in my mind is Vitalik. And so around 2014 or so, there were a couple of different things which happened that in my mind prevented BTC from kind of going down the rabbit hole of tokens. And one of them was they decreased op return from 80 bytes to 40 bytes.
So, and explain what that is for people who have no technical understanding of that.
Sure, no problem. So when you create a Bitcoin transaction or Bitcoin Cash, but in any one of the flavors of Bitcoin, you basically have outputs. So, you know, let's say I have a $5 bill and I want to split it and give you $3 and myself $2. That's like two outputs, right? Well, there's a bunch of different kinds of outputs. There's pay to pub key hash, pay to multi-sig, pay to script hash. And then there's something called null data. So a null data output is a provably unspendable output, which means that nodes can prune them safely and they can be sure they're not losing any financial data. And it allows you to store an arbitrary amount, just an arbitrary bit of data on the blockchain. Today in Bitcoin Cash, it's 220 bytes. It was always 80 bytes in BTC, and they decreased it to 40 bytes. So let me zoom out there a little bit. Like whenever you do a token transaction on Omni or Bitcoin Cash with many of these different protocols, which I can name off in a minute, whenever you create a transaction, you know, Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, it only knows about the cache layer. It doesn't have any idea of these higher level token abstractions. So whenever I create an output and I send myself a Satoshi, but I want it to be colored, the way I color that as a gold coin is there's this op return output. And there are people who have different protocols. Basically, you can encode data and put it there, and whatever you want the data to mean, it can mean. And that's one of the engines of innovation, which is going to prove to endlessly give to Bitcoin Cash, I predict, over the years. So basically, you can basically you have an op return which has 220 bytes. So around 2014. Sorry, let me get my train of thought back. Around 2000.
Sorry, well, you were talking about Vitalik and
I got it. Yeah, I was there. I was there. I was there. In 2014, basically, the BTC team decreased op return from 80 to 40 bytes. So prior to Omni, there was Mastercoin and Counterparty. There have been different sort of token proposals, and there's this really good blog post from the party.
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit. Say that again.
Yeah.
There was this really good.
Check. We good?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a really good blog post from the Counterparty team, and any links I mention, I'll gladly share with you afterwards. And it basically is the Counterparty team appealing to the Bitcoin core developers, saying, please do not decrease op return from 80 to 40 bytes. We have a really elegant protocol. It works at 80 bytes. If we decrease that to 40 bytes, we have to completely rethink our protocol, and it's going to break a lot of stuff. Please don't do that.
What was the reasoning? Why did they want to do that?
You know, the whole idea, I don't want to put words in the BTC camp's mouths, but as I perceive it, they think of transactions as spam. So in the world of op return, you're literally just I can go right now and create 1,000 transactions, which writes Naomi rules, and just send them to the blockchain, and they'll be there forever. So in the camp of the super purists who believe that, blocks should be very small and you should not have any type of spam and everything should be very pure, just writing arbitrary data, Naomi rules 1,000 times to the blockchain, they didn't like that. So as I understand it, it was simply a matter of is writing arbitrary data to the blockchain spam or not? And we saw a similar.
And that's and people's argument for why that might be is because it increases the block size, right? And we've had all this scaling debate that's since ensued, and so
I think there's a couple things there. Number one, it enlarges the block size, and if you live in a world of limited block size, that's a problem. And number two, the op return data is there forever. Now, null data is provably prunable; it's unspendable. So in theory, not all nodes need to maintain it forever. But in theory, like whenever we first updated our block size, you may remember when memo.cash first launched, there was like a big debate in the Bitcoin Cash community whether or not writing arbitrary data to the blockchain was spam. I personally take the stance that if a person...
And that's because memo.cash writes everything to the blockchain, right?
Exactly. So memo.cash.
And so it's like, is this interesting if anyone uses it, because I'm not sure that everyone knows what it is. So it's kind of like, I would say it's like Twitter for the blockchain space, because you have very small character count. You can't post images on there. It's like there are limited things you could do, but it's really, really great messaging platform that I post all of my content to, along with a bunch of other platforms. So just in case you don't know what memo.cash is. So I keep going. So the idea that, posting this to the blockchain, is that worthwhile? Is that necessary, etc.?
Sure. And I take the stance that if a person pays a fee for their transaction, there's no such thing as spam. So, I kind of fall into the camp that we really want to use the blockchain for as many things as possible. It happens to be that Cash is the killer app, but it's not the only app, and it's not the only thing that the market really wants. So,
and why do we want to use blockchain for as many things as possible?
Because of the, of the properties that it gives us. So, being able to solve problems in a trustless and decentralized manner is really a profound breakthrough for the entire planet. Really, it's as big as the web in a way. It is the internet of money, and it's money of the internet. So being able to take all of the things that we love about the blockchain, it empowers personal liberty, it's decentralized, it's trustless, it's permissionless, all of those things. Being able to take those and apply those properties to real world and digital items, not just cash, is a really, really profound idea. And you see it.
And that's one thing that Scott Stornetta talks a lot about as well. So one of a creator of one of the earliest blockchains, pre-Bitcoin, he was cited 4 out of the 8 times in the white paper. He really talks about this as not just being currency. This is decentralizing trust, and that can be applied to corporations, that can be applied to contracts, that can be applied to all kinds of different things. And we're really only, as you said, where is the Cambrian explosion of this tech. We're really seeing all the different ways this can proliferate and be applied to different industries, different sectors, etc.
Yes. So I guess to sort of walk my train of thought out there. So in 2014, as we know, Vitalik and his team of people left and they created Ethereum. And, you know, they wanted to sort of pursue this idea to an extreme. So on the one side of the spectrum, you have Bitcoin, or you have sort of cash on the blockchain. You have this idea that you can have a global cash system. And on the other side of the spectrum, you kind of have this worldwide computer. And I think that one of the great things about Bitcoin Cash is that it actually sort of sits in the middle. So, you know, we have cash. That's what we do, and we do it very well. But we also sort of have tokens, which I suspect once they mature, we will also do very well. So let me sort of finish my train of thought here. So, you know, Vitalik and his team left and created Ethereum. There was really, in my perception, I could be wrong about this, I welcome corrections, of course. There was really only one token which escaped from the BTC ecosystem, and that was USD Tether. So, you know, whatever your feelings are about Tether, you know, that's something that can be debated. But there was really one token which got out that was worth mentioning, and then that whole ecosystem never really flowered. Well, whenever Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin forked, there were multiple things which we did. So we re-enabled some old opcodes. We increased our op return from 80 bytes to 220 bytes. And of course, we increased our block size from 1 to 2, ultimately up to 32 megabytes. And then, as I mentioned, immediately after that, we saw a bunch of token proposals. So I'll just read off my list here. So we have Wormhole, which is a fork of Omni by Bitmain. We have SLP, which is Simple Ledger Protocol. This is like a more modern version of colored coins. It was created by Jonald Fuchball and James Kramer and the amazing Unwriter and Ryan Charles from Yours. There's also Counterparty Cash, which is a fork of Counterparty. There's Colored Coins, which, as I mentioned, goes back to 2012. There's Kyoken. So Bitprim is a really great team in our ecosystem. They have their own token proposal. There's Bitcoin Token, which was created by Clemens. He was one of the co-founders of Yours. There's Tokeda. That's by Johannes Vimerals from Locad. And then there is Honeybagger, which is a proposal which is created by our CTO, Emil, at bitcoin.com. And then ultimately there is the group proposal, which you may or may not remember last year was originally an opcode. Then it got refactored to be a new transaction type. And now it's even being refactored yet again into something called Supergroup. So basically just, you know, 2 or 3 months after we have this fork, we increase our op return, we increase our block size. We just see this Tocrambian explosion. And the analogy I use there is, for the first 4 billion years of life on Earth, everything was very, very simple. And then there was
So talking about life on Earth, I don't want to interrupt you. Can you hear that?
The bird in the background, I got you.
So that's a kookaburra. Anyone who's wondering, we are in Australia right now. That's a kookaburra. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. It's the laughing kookaburra. They sound like they're laughing. So just didn't want anyone to be distracted. Please keep going. So the Cambrian explosion.
No worries. So for the first 4 billion years on Earth, life was very, very simple. And then there was this period called the Cambrian, where there was an explosion of all these different life forms. And ultimately, that leads into all the biodiversity that we see in the world today comes from that period. And I believe we're witnessing the Tocambrian explosion in Bitcoin Cash, where we're going to just see a bunch of different token proposals tried, everything under the sun.
Wait, did you just call it a Tocambrian, as in like token Cambrian? Is that?
Yes, that's it.
I love that. The Tocambrian, I think that's really cool. All right.
Thank you. So yeah, I think we're just going to witness an explosion of different token body types, if you will. And some of them will make sense, some of them won't. The ones that do make sense are going to thrive in their ecosystem, and they're ultimately going to compete against each other in a Darwinian fashion. And I think the final outcome will be token proposals which are incredibly strong in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem.
So talk me through this mindset. I mean, there's big debates within the crypto sphere about how many tokens we need, how many currencies we need. Obviously, one camp in BTC says, listen, Bitcoin is enough. It's sort of a fixed sum game that if people are taking pieces of the pie away from Bitcoin, then that everyone loses. We should all jump on one bandwagon. And then there's this this other side that says, no, we shouldn't be focusing our efforts on one thing. We should have a competing marketplace. We should have all these different things. May the best technology win. Also, there's room for competing tokens, competing currencies even. So talk me through this this need for a token economy that you seem to subscribe to.
Sure. So, you know, counter to what I probably seem like, since I am so heavily into Bitcoin Cash, it's what I live, breathe, you know, it's what I live and breathe every day. I am not, in fact, a Bitcoin or even a Bitcoin Cash maximalist. Really, what I want to do is I want to have a positive impact on the world with my life and my work. There are 4 areas which I really want to make an impact on. There's the division of wealth between the rich and the poor, the turnkey police state, the coming wave of automation and AI, and the changing environment. And at the current moment, I think Bitcoin Cash has given me the greatest leverage to make the greatest change around the world. But I think you see in almost all nations, there's like a long tail, right? So there's a power law where you have the fat head, where there's maybe 1, 2, or 3 big players, and then there's just this long tail of everybody else. And I suspect the same thing will be true in cryptocurrencies as well as tokens. So I don't, ultimately, I think the reason, or let me zoom out there. What I want is, I want the best ideas to win, and I want the best ideas to be able to be articulated in a free and open marketplace of ideas. That's really what we want. We want the best ideas to kind of compete against each other, and then ultimately you have the outcome of these battle-hardened ideas, which are very, very solid. So I think we're in that era of cryptocurrencies, and then also, like I mentioned, in Bitcoin Cash with all of the different token proposals. So even though I spend all of my time working on Bitcoin Cash, because I really do believe that that gives me personally the greatest leverage to achieve the goals I want, to have a positive impact on my life, or on the world with my life and my work. Of course, I support all cryptocurrencies which achieve that goal of giving people personal liberty, you know? And then the same thing with tokens. Even though I've dedicated a ton of time to Wormhole and SLP, I support any token protocols on Bitcoin Cash. In my opinion, tokens are the 100x multiplier that will take us from 1 to 100. So, you know, I'm a developer advocate at bitcoin.com. I'm the senior Bitcoin Cash engineer. I travel all over the world. I go to tons of hackathons. And there's just no question about it. When you're on the ground, when you're at a hackathon, the things people are creating are Ethereum and EOS tokens. So it's not like it's a solution we have to force on the market. It's a problem that the market clearly wants solved. And one of the things I do as part of my job at bitcoin.com is I on-ramp businesses into the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. I have several meetings every week, and nearly universally they'll say 2 things to me. They'll say, we want to accept Bitcoin Cash payments, or we want to accept crypto payments. We know Bitcoin Cash has quick and inexpensive transactions, so we know you guys are golden there. But we also want to raise money with a token sale, or we want to issue a security token like stock options on the blockchain, or we need a customer loyalty point, or we need a utility token for our new app. How do we do that in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem? And we didn't have a great answer for that. And so to me, whenever I was in Hong Kong last August and Bitmain made the announcement for Wormhole, it just sent off all my spidey senses tingling, because I knew it solved the problem I had, which was, if you want to raise money in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, okay, you do a crowd sale on Wormhole.
Yeah. So walk me through the difference. I mean, there were some people confused in the chat before, because obviously this is very technologically dense stuff that you're talking about. So Omni was this decentralized layer that was put on top of BTC. You said that Tether came out of that. And there wasn't much else that came out of that. And then Wormhole is a fork of Omni. So just to walk us through slowly and like as simply as possible, like the differences between Omni and Wormhole. Wormhole allows for different ERC. What were they called? ERC
721.
721 tokens.
Yeah.
So just walk me through some of the differences there and some of the capabilities that this layer will have that we won't have on Bitcoin.
Sure. So I think we'll start with the similarities. So both Omni and Wormhole. So as far as I know, Omni is not actually on Bitcoin Cash. I don't know. I think it only exists on Bitcoin Cash as wormhole. I could be incorrect about that, but I don't think there is actually an Omni protocol, so to speak, on Bitcoin Cash. But the places that they're similar are they allow you to issue. Well, actually, let me zoom out there a little bit. We can kind of dig in to the way this works. So, in the context of wormhole, there is a utility token called wormhole coin. And you need this utility token to issue new assets on the blockchain. You need it to pay certain types of fees. So for example, if I wanted to do an airdrop and give everybody a token, or if I wanted to run some smart contracts, you need to ultimately burn this wormhole coin. And the way wormhole coin is created is by proof of burn. And I don't know if you were around during the super contentious proof of burn wars that happened last year, but it was one of the most contentious things that have happened since I've been in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. I myself felt like it was overblown. I wouldn't have dedicated the energy I have to it if I felt like it was truly the problem that it was being portrayed to be. But the idea.
And what were some of the issues that people were bringing up?
Well, I mean, first, let's ask, why does there even need to be a proof of burn? I mean, of course, the issue, the big issue for people is simply that one of the things we love about Bitcoin Cash is that there's only 21 million ever. It's based on the model of gold, and it gets harder to extract over time. So in theory, if you just burn it all up, then there's less, less for the rest of the time. And that's a valid concern for what it's worth. I think at a super high level, did everybody burn all of their BTC for Omni? No, they did not. And why not? Because there's a spectrum of utility which BTC offers, and Omni was like a small slice of it, but it didn't offer everything else BTC did. And that's kind of the way it is with Wormhole. So, there's a spectrum of utility which BCH offers, and Wormhole is a subset of that, but it doesn't offer everything which BCH does, such as cash and zero conf like that. So to me, they're very much complementary as opposed to competing layers. But so, real quick, I just want to breeze through the proof of burn thing. So, why is there a proof of burn? Number one. So it's simply that there were two problems which ultimately needed to be solved. Number one, how does the wormhole coin get distributed fairly? And then number two, how do you get it around it being a security token? So as you know, a security token.
Are you getting around it being a security token?
Well, you are in this sense. I mean, yes, in theory you are, because there is no investment in a common enterprise and there is no expectation of profit. So in theory, it doesn't fail the Howey test. And so the idea was, in the same way that BTC, so, BTC or BCH has proof of work, which is very elegant, and it allows people to take electricity and ultimately convert that into tokens on the Bitcoin, or, coins on the network. Because Wormhole is a layer 2 network which sits on top of it, and it pays BCH small mining fees to register valid Wormhole transactions, there was no really reason to reuse proof of work. So proof of burn basically legitimizes the Wormhole tokens, distributes them fairly, doesn't have any type of pre-mine, and then ultimately confirms that it's a utility token and doesn't fail the Howey test. So
maybe we need to do an entire episode on proof of burn to walk people through, because I haven't looked into it much at all. So
sure.
I mean, if you wanted to give us just a little bit of a background.
Yeah, so there are like burner addresses. You've probably seen like one BTC burner or one BTC eater or something like that. There are addresses where the public the address or the public key, it's mathematically improbable that anybody has the corresponding private key without having, crunch numbers for the age of 14 universes or something like that. So the wormhole burner address is something like 10 Qs and then a checksum at the end. And whenever you send a single BCH to it, you add an op return transaction, especially encoded output, basically, that says, hey, I, Gabriel, am burning this one BCH. And in turn, you're going to issue me 100 wormhole tokens. And so that 100 wormhole coins. So that takes 1,000 blocks, basically, and then you will be issued them. So that's kind of, that's really it at its essence. There is just a burner address that, until we have quantum computers, or until there is some type of paradigm shift in being able to reverse engineer private keys from public keys, We can trust that nobody is able to access those tokens or your Bitcoin Cash. You're effectively burning them. They're gone forever. But in return, in the wormhole network, you will get issued 100 wormhole coins. And with those 100 wormhole coins, you can then start issuing assets and sending them around, doing airdrops, etc.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And there was a lot of contentious. You talked about all the contention before that was happening. I know that talking about Tether as well, people got really heated up discussing this. Making sure that everything going on there was legit. And so you guys have implemented a way like wormhole runs on proof of burn. Is that?
I mean, so the transactions are still validated by miners. So
Yeah.
really the proof of burn is simply to issue the utility token,
I see.
and then also you use it in the smart contract platform. So we can circle back
Okay.
to that later. But like, for example, right now, if I create a Gabriel token and 50 people hold them, I can issue 100 new Gabriel tokens and I can send everybody in who owns one 2 extra ones, and I pay a small amount of wormhole coin there. Or if I run the smart contracts, I burn gas, which is to Ether's version of gas. So really, proof of burn is strictly around issuing the utility token for the platform.
Okay, interesting. So going back to different utility tokens and different currencies. So there are people in the chat. Feel free to use the power chat, everyone, by the way, because I am on Bitbacker. I post all of my stuff on Bitbacker. So if you wanted to send any questions, feel free to send those through the link I just posted. But people who are saying, it's great to have sound money and competing currencies. But at the end of the day, game theory comes into play, and people will tend to gravitate around the currencies that have a network effect. To have a network effect, you kind of need to get people all on board. So, like, what sort of use cases do you see for this BCH ecosystem where you have lots of utility tokens based on that? And how is this world and how is this ecosystem going to be different to what Ethereum provides currently?
Yeah, so I don't just think it's utility tokens. I mean, how many trillions of dollars are there in stocks and bonds around the world? I think security tokens are going to be absolutely huge. I think we need to get the legal framework in place. I'm a big fan of the work that Caitlin Long and Tyler Lindholm have been doing in Wyoming around getting utility tokens exempt from money transmitter laws and creating entirely new classes of LLCs. But, I just... to me, it's kind of like, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of just like every single thing you love about the blockchain, every single thing about all the benefits that the blockchain brought to money, tokens can bring to digital and physical items above and beyond. So I think we'll see people, as I mentioned, I think we'll just see them tokenize every type of security there is. Because having gone through I was at Trulia in 2012 and I was there for our IPO, and it took about 14 months for us to go public. Our CEO traveled all around the nation doing a roadshow. It was very, very expensive. We went public on the New York Stock Exchange, and we worked with Bear Stearns. It was very, very expensive. It was very slow, and it was very wrapped in red tape. We raised $102 million, and you can compare that with EOS, which launched as an ERC20 token, raised $4.213 billion, a completely decentralized team based in the Cayman Islands. They didn't even have a product when they launched. So, raising money, launching securities on the block. I think of ICOs and token sales as raising money at the speed of the web. So number one, I just think it's incredibly disruptive to allow people to bootstrap money in that sort of decentralized, permissionless way. It's very, very disruptive. It's why we see governments around the world struggling so hard to get the legal frameworks in place, because it's all happening so very, very quickly. And then in the context of Ethereum, well, first, I just want to preface it by saying I'm a huge fan of Vitalik. I'm a huge fan of Ethereum. I actually stepped away from BTC during the scaling debate because I was pretty sure it wasn't going anywhere, and I focused all of my attention on Ethereum. And it wasn't until the Bitcoin Cash fork that I actually shifted my focus back into the Bitcoin ecosystem. So I'm a huge fan of Ethereum for what it's worth. I think one thing they did not do is they didn't optimize for cash. So, when an Ethereum smart contract blows up, such as CryptoKitties, which I think is great. A lot of people talk pejoratively about CryptoKitties. I think it's a very, very exciting project. I
Yeah, I
think
think it's great. I love the idea of unique digital assets and this world like
exactly.
that we're going to create. Like, I think obviously this is the next step because people want cool, fun things like that, gamey things. If you go to a concert, why not have a unique digital asset rather than just a QR code that you could scan? Why not have something that you can keep as a collectible, something that
Sure.
maybe evolves over time? Like, I'm also interested in what BlockV is doing there. But sorry, keep going. Talking about CryptoKitties perhaps exploding.
Yeah. So like
Exploding CryptoKitties.
yeah,
It's a
when
new card game in
CryptoKitties,
that.
whenever it blew up last year, if you remember, there was like a 10,000% spike in the fees over the course of a couple of weeks because the entire network got super clogged. So basically, in Ethereum world, if you create every single node executes every single smart contract. So if you have a smart contract and it absolutely blows up, it causes the network to slow down. And I do believe that they'll solve this problem. They've got an incredibly smart group of people working on it. But today, that's the situation. In Bitcoin Cash world, we have scale and we have throughput for days. So, today we have 32 megabyte blocks. We have the scale of PayPal today. And on our roadmap is terabyte blocks. So, we want 10 billion people in the world to be able to do 50 on-chain transactions every single day. And, that's very aggressive today. If you tell somebody a terabyte block every 10 minutes, that seems crazy. But in the same way, a megabyte was a lot when we were kids, but a megabyte is not a lot
That's
today.
true. Remember
Yeah.
floppy disks?
Yes,
Oh.
absolutely. Yes. So the same thing is happening. We're having hardware innovation. There's Moore's Law. Moore's Law has a superset called Kurzweil's Law of accelerating returns. It's going to extend far beyond any of our lifetimes, unless we have life extension, which I believe we will. So you and I will probably
Yes, the
be 100.
singularity will happen soon.
It will. So, within our extended lifetimes, we're going to continue to see hardware and software innovation. So we see things like graphene, we see things like CTOR, et cetera. So in Bitcoin Cash, our smart contracts and our tokens, they are just op return statements. And every single node on the network doesn't have to execute them. They see them and they can even prune them. They're provably unspendable. So if your Bitcoin Cash token or smart contract absolutely blows up, it doesn't clog the network, and we're going to continue to scale to these absolutely huge blocks. So one place that I see Bitcoin Cash having a huge advantage over Ethereum is simply that we have larger blocks, and that's on our roadmap, and that every single node doesn't need to execute every single smart contract. So we're kind of immune to having our network totally clog up if anything becomes very popular.
Right. I wanted to go back to what you mentioned earlier about stocks and bonds and all of that. I think that is a big mistake that everyone makes because they talk about all of these tokens and currencies as if they're all on the same playing field, not realizing how many different types of currencies that are currently are out there, how many different types of financial products there are out there. They don't all have the same function. They're very, very different. I think that's a great analogy. Like utility tokens, they are kind of like these different financial tools of the blockchain world and can be like very specifically applied for specific purposes. You went through a bunch of them, like land titling, smart contract, like all kinds of different things. But yeah, I think people kind of get confused there, and they think, oh, we'll only end up with one currency. So what's the point of having all these other different tokens? What are they good for? Well, I currently use PayPal, and I also use Visa, and I also use a bank account, and I also use yen, and I use US dollars, and I use Australian dollars. We have all of these things currently that are competing, and they work just fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, and as I mentioned, that's really what we want, right? We want competition of the best ideas in a free and open marketplace of ideas, so that ultimately the best battle-hardened ideas come out of that. And I think that in the context of sort of a Bitcoin Cash, which is where I spend all my time every day, of course. And I guess I mean this in the entire ecosystem. So, like one of the biggest challenges we face and one of the biggest opportunities we face is tokens in Bitcoin Cash. And the reason I say that is because our tribe didn't develop a great intuition around tokens. We missed tokens, frankly. Tokens happened on other platforms. So, having spent the last 6 months traveling around the world and advocating for tokens, I've gotten a lot of pushback from people who think that tokens and cash compete. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. Tokens and cash complement each other. And that's why Bitcoin Cash is in such a good place. And that's why I welcome all these different token proposals. Because as you mentioned, the landscape of the problems that we need to solve is so diverse that we really kind of need to spread we need breadth and we need depth if we're going to solve this problem in the correct way. And eventually something will catch and it'll explode. And when it does, it'll be the right solution. But I feel like in this moment, because we don't yet have a great intuition about the token economy and the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, we're still dealing with a lot of primitives. We're still building up a lot of the ecosystem, which is, frankly, very, very far ahead of us in the Ethereum ecosystem. So, it's a great opportunity and it's a great challenge. And the play that I've made my entire time in Bitcoin Cash. So, I've launched several projects now. And from day one, it's really just been about the opportunity in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem is build out the infrastructure, which is not mature yet from other ecosystems. So I often say, like, how often do you get the opportunity of a lifetime a second time? That to me is really what BCH represented. It represented a chance for us to actually just play out the Bitcoin experiment that we're not going to get to see played out on BTC.
Yeah, there are people asking in the chat, why can't wormhole be implemented on BTC, for example? Isn't that something that could be added? But I think at the moment that stuff isn't talked about. They're not wanting to add that sort of functionality. Is that correct?
Yeah. So as I understand it, BTC still has 80 bytes on their op return. So I think it might be a little awkward to get it to work because Wormhole is programmed for 220 bytes in op return. And plus, it's just a simple matter of, not being able to count on the BTC chain simply because the blocks are small and the transaction fees are high. So, why will Lightning Network, or, you talked to Chris Messia a lot. I saw your interview with him. That was a really good one. They recently released, I forget what it's called, but there's like a payment channel technology using IPFS and Bitcoin Cash. It's like a unidirectional payment channel. It's not quite the Lightning Network, but it's something sort of along those lines. Why will payment channels work better on BCH than BTC? Well, because we have quick and expensive transactions and our blocks are large. So it's easy to open and close channels and fund channels, etc. So the same thing with tokens. In theory, they probably could launch it on BTC. I think they still have a culture of transactions equal spam. And then also, I'm not entirely sure their tech stack would support it simply because op return is, 1/3 the size or something like that.
Can we talk about some of the controversy surrounding wormholes? So I know that Craig Wright has talked about this, and some of those supporters, that was sort of their thing that they were saying, like, oh, we don't want this. That's why we're creating Toshi's vision. So talk about, like, what was some of the contentious issues that they brought up? Why were they against it?
Oh man, I prefer to talk about ideas other than people. So of course,
let's talk about the ideas of some of these strange people.
Sure. So some of the ideas, I mean, the most contentious one, and the one which I believe prevented Wormhole from really taking off as strong as it should have. The adoption hasn't been as much as I would have liked to at this point. And I think a big part of it was the controversy around the burning. So number one, there was just this this idea got floated around that the guys at Bitmain had the keys to the burner address. So basically, you're sending Bitmain your BCH or something. I don't believe that's true. I know the guys. I just got back from Beijing about 5 weeks ago. I was over there to specifically visit the Wormhole team. Long Nguyen, who is their cryptographer, wrote an amazingly good blog post on how that's not a true accusation. In my mind, Bitmain has so much to lose by making a stupid move that however many BCH have been burned, I think there's probably been around 2,000 or so for Wormhole coins. Whatever that number is, it pales in comparison to the size numbers that Bitmain does. And I fail to believe that they would jeopardize themselves from a business perspective by putting out a fake burner address and, stealing 2,000 BCH. That to me just seems not like a real concern. Yeah. So to me, that was the main one. It was simply just, there was a big...
Like, how do we know?
Yeah, and just the idea that it's stupid to burn BCH. There was just a ton of people who came out and said it's stupid to burn BCH. Now, we all know that and I don't like appeal to authority. So, I'm going to drop in some Satoshi quotes here, and it's not an appeal to authority. It's kind of just
Let
context.
us read from the Bible of
Yes.
Satoshi,
So
passage 8.
yeah, exactly. So Satoshi said, if somebody destroys their coins, think of it as a small donation to everyone else.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so you can imagine if you have a certain amount of N dollars, which are spread across the entire ecosystem of M tokens, and then you have M minus one, but it's the same value in N, then all of the different tokens became ever so slightly more valuable. So if you were a completely rational financial actor, you would in fact want me to burn all of my BCH, because all it's actually doing is making it more valuable for you. And then
Right.
also I think there's an argument to be made about, when you burn a BCH for a wormhole coin, are you creating or are you taking away value? And, to me, there is no obvious answer here. This is going to be different for everybody else. And that's why this is such a contentious object. But let me give you an example. So Via BTC launched their token, Viat, VIAT. They launched it on Wormhole, maybe back in September, October. They had a 3-hour token sell. They raised 30 some million dollars. They were making around $3,800 a second. I don't remember exactly what they were making, but they raised a significant amount of money. They did that on Wormhole. So in theory, you have to burn one Wormhole coin to create a new asset, a new token. So in theory, they took one BCH, they burned it. They got 100 Wormhole coins. They took one of those, they burned it and created Via token, and then they raised $30 million. So the question is, did they add or did they remove from the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem? And of course, nobody is going to have an easy answer. In my opinion, they added to the ecosystem. These are businessmen and women. They presumably know that it takes money to make money. It's their prerogative to invest their money however they see fit. They deemed it a worthy sacrifice of one BCH to raise $30 million. They also created a ton of positive press around the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. They created a ton of movement in the markets. If you asked me, did they add or remove? In my opinion, they added. But, some people will take the exact opposite and say, no, don't you understand? They burned one of the precious 21 million BCH that will ever exist for all of time. And that's a valid argument. And if that's the way
Let's
they feel, they
reclaim
feel.
it later.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like
It's
miners
funny
reclaiming
because, like, I
gold.
mean, it's this strange mindset, because we all know that creating, when the government does QE and they create a bunch of money out of thin air, that's a small tax on everyone. That's quietly expropriating everyone's wealth without having to put through a new tax. They diminish the value of everyone's savings because they create more supply. So obviously, diminishing the supply helps increase the value of everyone's savings. So it's strange for me that people look at that as if it's a bad thing, as if I just increased everyone's savings.
My personal opinion, this is just my personal opinion. I want to be super clear about that. My personal opinion is that was the attack on burning was really an attack. How's the best way to phrase this properly? As I perceive it, Bitmain putting their energy behind Wormhole was a very, very significant moment for Bitcoin Cash. To me, let me just back up again. I'm a huge fan of Bitmain and Jihan. Like, I really just like people who are ultra professional and really change the world and have a big impact. And, Bitmain to me checks off a lot of boxes. Are they perfect in every way? Of course not. Nobody is, and nothing is. It's always a balance, right? But to me, I'm just a huge advocate of Jihan and Bitmain and everything they've done for our ecosystem going back many years. So, whenever I saw them put their weight behind Wormhole, to me, it was a very, very significant event. And I don't think I was the only person in the ecosystem to perceive that. And, there are many, many different teams who've been trying to race towards this goal of tokenization on Bitcoin for many years. And in my opinion, Bitmain landed the first and the hardest with this announcement back in August. And so I feel like it was more a social media attack by people who, instead of competing on technical merit, compete by being petulant on social media.
Right. No, in the Twitter space, that I haven't seen that at all. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think that, so Wormhole is currently functional. People don't really know much about it. I feel like there isn't too much talk about some of the exciting things that are going on there. So tell me, like, what are you most excited about seeing there? What's being developed that we should be keeping an eye on?
Sure. So I think the bear market hurt the entire crypto ecosystem a lot, obviously. And then the BCH BSV fork also hurt the ecosystem a lot. So we all
Yeah.
know that network effects don't grow linearly, they grow exponentially. So if you take your tribe and you double it, you get some like 4x multiplier on your network effect. But if you break your tribe in half, you don't go to 50%, you go to like 25% or less, right? So there's just this nonlinear thing that happens with your network effect. And there's just no question about it. Going through the fork was a big deal, and it cooled off our ecosystem in a big way. So we're kind of picking up those pieces. We're all attacking everything in 2009. Everybody's finding their footing again. Everybody is getting re-inspired. So there is a bit of that happening. And I think that might be why there's just not a ton of information out there. Plus, there are just some ecosystem pieces which need to fall into place. So whenever the token ecosystem started evolving on Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash in the third quarter of last year, there were sort of a bunch of whispers in the tribe like, somebody has to fork MetaMask. So MetaMask, of course, is the Chrome extension in the Ethereum ecosystem, and it is an absolute catalyst. If you use any Ethereum dApp, guaranteed you've installed MetaMask in your browser, right? So last year, there was just a bunch of sort of talk like somebody needs to fork MetaMask, somebody needs to fork MetaMask. So this amazing dude I work with, Spin BCH, and myself forked MetaMask about maybe 2.5 months ago or so, and plugged in Bitbox. So if you go to badger.bitcoin.com, this is like a soft launch. We're going to be making the announcement tomorrow, but it's all live right now. You can download this, and this is like a next generation wallet, which was built with intention of allowing you to Bitcoin as an experience.
Oh, sorry, you're cutting out. Say that again. It was built with the intention of
allowing you to experience Bitcoin Cash as it's meant to be experienced. So, Web 1.0 was static documents. Tim Berners-Lee worked at CERN. He had a bunch of static documents. He needed to share them with other scientists, but everybody was on different computing hardware. What do? Well, what if we all created HTML documents? We could share those. Boom, Web 1.0. Web 2.0 was Ajax and HTML5. So the web started becoming alive with as an application platform, and the W3C, which I was a member of, the HTML5 working group, we created the HTML5 specification to give developers the abstractions to create applications on the web. And now the web is once again evolving into native payments, tokens, smart contracts, paywalls, etc. And for that, we need browsers, we need wallets which enable that kind of functionality. So Badger, which is the most exciting project in the entire Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, in my opinion, is that next generation wallet. It's MetaMask for Bitcoin Cash, and we support Bitcoin Cash. Obviously, we support SLP tokens and wormhole tokens, and we also there's a bunch of really exciting technology evolving around identity in Bitcoin Cash. I'm sure you've seen Cash accounts and Cash ID. So Cash ID allows you to authenticate with a website using only your Bitcoin Cash keys. They can issue you a little challenge, and you can sign a message and sign in, and you can pass over metadata. Of course, Cash accounts let you create a little username, kind of like cash addresses from Handcash. So we support Cash ID. We're rolling out Cash account support. And then we also have the Badger button. So everybody knows the money button. That was part of Ryan. I absolutely think Ryan is a great, great guy. But of course, they forked to BSV. And I didn't love their architecture.
Yeah, and I was really disappointed with that, honestly. I was using yours.org, and I really loved it. It was a great site. I uploaded all my stuff there. I think my account might have actually been just kind of shut down because he said that he was going to shut down anyone who was very anti-SV, and I'm not a huge fan of patent trolls, so that's kind of where I stand. And so I wanted to do an interview with Craig, and I would have loved for him to speak his mind and to give his point of view. And I really wanted to actually have a debate between him and Chris Pacia, because I think it's really helpful for people to see two people actually talking out ideas. We are able to live in our little bubbles and throw, pithy sentences at each other. That's like gotcha moments, but that's not a dialogue, and that doesn't really get to the heart of who's right. So I would have loved to do that. But then didn't end up happening, and then now I go into my yours.org account, and I just get like this rotating loading bar that never goes anywhere now. So I've stopped uploading there now, which is disappointing, but that's where we are.
I agree. Fortunately, we have Honest.cash, which sprung up by Adrian Barwicki. He was one of the winners of the Amsterdam hackathon. But anyway, just to sum it up, people know about the money button. Well, really, one of the things that Ethereum has is this Web3 API. So basically, the glue which binds your smart contracts to the web is this API called Web3, and we're implementing that, of course, in Badger. So we have currently today what we're calling Badger Button, but it's just sort of the first implementation of showing people this Badger SDK API where they can drop payments and paywalls and smart contracts into their website, and it's very, very advanced. So to answer your question, to me, the most exciting thing happening in the entire ecosystem is Badger. That's why we created it, and I believe it's going to be. My hope is that it will be a catalyst for the entire Bitcoin Cash ecosystem in 2019.
All right, well, let's see what happens there. We've run out of time here with this discussion, but this has been really, really helpful. If people want to learn more about Wormhole and some of the projects that are being built there, is there any sort of comprehensive database or list that actually lists some of the things that people could check out?
Sure. So we have, I am the senior Bitcoin Cash engineer at bitcoin.com. Thank you, Roger Ver. Boom. I created developer.bitcoin.com, and we have several SDKs. We have Bitbox SDK. We also have a Wormhole SDK and an SLP SDK. So everything I mentioned during this entire conversation, you can do with the SDKs. We have sample code. We have a faucet to give you free testnet, Wormhole coin, and BCH. And then we also have a bitcoin.com Discord channel that anybody can join. We are very, very responsive there. There's maybe like 300 people in there all the time chatting and hacking on great new projects. So you can reach out to me, CG Cardona, on Twitter, or you can even email me. I'm Gabriel at bitcoin.com.
Yeah.
And yeah, my job is to on-ramp smart and creative people into the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. So I encourage you to reach out to me if you're interested.
Oh. And I guess, I mean, there were some people talking about this in the chat, and I don't want to spend time on it because we're really running out of time. But I would just love your thoughts on the breaking news of the Ethereum Classic attack. I know that the BSV and BCH, there is a lot of animosity there. There's a lot of threats of 51% attacks. There's a lot of threats between BTC and BCH as well. Like, are you worried about a 51% attack, having seen what's playing out in Ethereum at the moment?
I think it doesn't really worry me so much. Number one, we have the rolling checkpoints now, which, as you know, I saw you mention them to Roger, have been incredibly contentious. But above and beyond that, we've been living in this world where Bitcoin Cash is not the dominant chain since the fork from BTC. And we've not seen any malicious actors from the BTC hash pool simply because they make more profit by mining and being honest than they do by attacking us. So, at the current,
and that's really good to see as well. Like, it's nice to actually have the incentives in place that are the correct incentives. It's better to create than to destroy. And that was something that I found interesting about the split between the two camps. It wasn't in people's financial best interest to attack each other, but they were thinking long term. They were thinking, if we can delete one of the chains, if we could get rid of it, then we could potentially get more profitable. As soon as we discovered, okay, no, actually they've split, they're both going to exist, people stopped. That was really interesting to see play out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the BCH and BSV fork were as important, if not even more important, counterintuitively, than the BTC BCH fork. To me, at the time, even though we were going through it and it felt like the worst possible move we could have made, I think it ultimately was the best move we could have made, because similar to BTC and BCH needing to be shaken out because there were different visions of the two different tribes, it was good for BCH and BSV to ultimately shake out the different visions and the different tribes, because similar to any other relationship, it's good to know if you're headed in the right direction. And if not, then it's best to go your separate ways. So even though it froze us a little bit, I feel like it was the right thing to happen.
Yeah. So someone just sent me a power chat on Bitbacker. It was Mark Lundeberg.
Yes, Mark.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate that. He says, hey, go buy yourself one WHC, which I presume is the abbreviation for Wormhole coin.
Yes.
So where do I go to buy a Wormhole coin if I do that? Huge thank you, Mark, by the way, for using Bitbacker. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so let me just give a shout out to Mark. Mark is like one of the best engineers in the space. He came through Tokyo like 3 months ago, and I never get ill. I'm a very, very healthy person, and for some weird reason, I got ill one day, and I didn't go into the office, and I missed him. So sorry, Mark. Mark was involved in SLP, I believe. He also helped people split their coins between BCH and BSV. And he also recently created an atomic swap thing on Electron Cash, I believe. But yeah, so Wormhole coin is available today. You can buy it at CoinEx, for example. So, if you have a CoinEx account, you can buy it at exchanges today.
Okay, so which exchanges would you recommend that I go to?
CoinEx is honestly the only one I use, and that's where I got all of my Wormhole coins. So that's the one I would recommend.
There we go. All right, well, maybe I'll do a video on what that experience is like and how easy it is, and I will keep you all posted. But Gabriel, thank you so much for chatting with me. This has been really, really great, and hopefully it's helped shed some light on what this is. I know there's a lot of talk about it, and as you said, a lot of pot shots taken on the internet about it as well. So it's nice just to clarify what's actually going on and some of the exciting things that are happening in the space. So I appreciate your time and for being here.
Yeah, it was a great honor. Thank you, Naomi. I'm a big fan of your work. So if you ever,
thank you. I appreciate
anytime, let me know. Thank you.
Maybe we'll do some more follow-ups so later on as things develop. As you said, we're at the start of this explosion, so I think there's going to be a lot to talk about. And thank you so much to everyone who is here in the chat at the moment. Mark, yeah, thanks for using Bitbacker. It is surprisingly easy. You don't even need an account there to send a message to someone. I use it for all of my live streams because YouTube takes 30% of every super chat that gets sent. Wow. And also, they only use dirty fiat, so we don't want to support that system. So Bitbacker allows you to do power chats, and you don't have to create an account if you don't want to. You can just send through a message, and I'll read out all of those comments live. So thank you, Mark, and I am going to use that BCH to go and buy some Wormhole. So there you go. Nice. So thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to let you go. I'm sorry about the sunglasses. It's just incredibly bright here. Australia is a very bright country, and it is the middle of the day here. I am heading back to set now in the middle of shooting a feature film. So I'm updating photos now that I finally have some internet to my Telegram group. So stay connected there, and I'll chat to you all in a bit. All right. Thanks so much everyone for being here.